For the past 3 years, rent prices across the United States have done something few thought was possible. They surged upward at a speed and scale unmatched in modern times. From Miami all the way to Seattle, landlords held the upper hand. They jacked up rents by hundreds of dollars almost overnight, convinced renters had no choice but to pay whatever it took to keep a roof over their heads. But in 2026, that dominance is breaking down. All across the country, cities that were once defined by fierce bidding wars are now flooded with vacant units. For the first time in more than 10 years, rents aren't just easing, they're dropping quickly. Builders overextended. Investors took on too much debt. And the very people they relied on, the renters, have finally reached their breaking point. In several major metro areas, prices are falling by double digits. Move-in incentives are back. Discounts are spreading. Free months of rent are showing up again. Landlords are growing anxious, tenants are walking away, and the balance of power in America's rental market is shifting yet again. This is Discover the Cities, and today we're counting down the top 10 U.S. cities where rent is collapsing and landlords are starting to panic in 2026. Stay with us all the way to number 1, because what's unfolding right now could reshape the rental market for years ahead. And if you want more cinematic, in-depth breakdowns of America's housing trends, hit subscribe now, and let's get started. Number 10. Austin, Texas. Austin's ascent was explosive, and its downturn is just as dramatic. Between 2020 and 2023, the Texas capital transformed into the epicenter of America's tech migration. Remote workers poured in, venture capital followed, and major startups relocated inland to escape coastal costs. Austin proudly wore the label of the next Silicon Valley, and for a while it looked the part. Construction cranes dominated the skyline, upscale apartment towers appeared almost overnight, and landlords boosted rents at breakneck speed. But by 2026, that momentum has stalled, and then reversed. Average rents are now down roughly 14% compared to a year earlier, marking the sharpest decline anywhere in the sunbelt. Thousands of sleek new units built during the boom are sitting partially vacant, with rooftop amenities going unused. The same developers who once bragged about year-long waitlists are now rolling out aggressive incentives: 3 months of free rent, waived deposits, even perks like concert tickets to lure tenants. The underlying cause is straightforward. The tech surge fizzled. Layoffs at major employers such as Meta, Oracle, and Tesla have wiped out a large portion of Austin's high-income renter pool. The once flattering nickname, Silicon Hills, now rings hollow. Vacancy rates in downtown towers like The Independent and 70 Rainey have climbed to levels not seen in a decade. In East Austin, formerly a hotspot of creative renewal, landlords are cutting prices simply to stay competitive. For owners who stretch themselves thin, especially those who bought luxury condos at peak prices betting on nonstop growth, the math no longer works. Profits have vanished under the pressure of high-interest debt and disappearing tenants. For renters, though, this shift feels overdue. A city that became unaffordable almost overnight is finally loosening its grip, returning leverage to the people who actually live and work there. By 2026, Austin's message is unmistakable. The city that rose the fastest is now correcting just as forcefully, and the shockwaves from that reversal are rippling across the entire Sunbelt. Number 9. Miami, Florida. Miami's rental surge wasn't just dramatic, it was overwhelming. Powered by the pandemic-era migration, waves of crypto money, and international investors chasing sunshine, prestige, and returns, the city turned into a magnet for the global elite and remote professionals alike. Between 2020 and 2022, rents skyrocketed by more than 60%, forcing longtime residents out and transforming downtown high-rises into monuments of excess and speculation. By 2026, the shine has worn off, and the downturn is impossible to ignore. Average rents are down roughly 11% compared to the year before, while vacancy rates are climbing fast in Brickell, downtown Miami, and Miami Beach. Luxury towers that once sold a dream of ocean views and rooftop infinity pools are now dangling incentives just to stay occupied: free parking, no security deposits, and even $2,000 gift cards for new tenants. This isn't only about weaker demand. Costs are exploding. Insurance premiums have surged, in some cases tripling, pushing many landlords deep into the red. HOA fees have jumped sharply as buildings scramble to comply with Florida's stricter post-collapse safety regulations. The result is a growing number of investors bleeding cash month after month. For some, the damage is already done. Condos that once traded near $900,000 are now listing closer to $700,000, or sitting unsold altogether. Short-term rental owners who once thrived on nonstop tourism are pulling out as travel demand cools and maintenance expenses wipe out profits. Even foreign investors, long considered Miami's financial backbone, are retreating, unnerved by rising storm risks and a steady stream of costly special assessments. From the outside, Miami still looks stunning. Turquoise water, sunlit towers, a postcard-perfect skyline. But beneath the surface, the numbers no longer add up. In 2026, Miami stands as a warning about unchecked optimism, a city that believed demand would never end, now learning that when luxury stretches beyond logic, even paradise can falter. Number 8. Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta was widely seen as the exception, the southern city that seemed to get everything right. Strong job growth, relatively affordable housing, and steady inflows of newcomers from both coasts gave it a reputation as a safe, long-term bet. Developers believed the story completely. Billions of dollars poured into new apartment projects stretching from Midtown to Sandy Springs. Between 2021 and 2024, more than 50,000 new rental units came online, far more than the market could realistically handle. By 2026, that confidence has unraveled. Rents are down about 9% compared to last year, vacancies are rising, and developers are scrambling to react. Towers that once leased up almost immediately now sit partially empty. To attract tenants, landlords are rolling out aggressive offers: 3 months of free rent, complimentary parking, and zero security deposits. Anything that might spark demand. But oversupply is only part of the problem. Wage growth has stalled while inflation continues to squeeze household finances. Student loan payments are pulling cash out of younger renters' budgets. Millennials and Gen Z residents are responding by doubling up with roommates, moving back in with family, or leaving the metro area entirely. Even Atlanta's previously resilient suburbs, Cobb, Gwinnett, and Henry counties, are starting to feel the slowdown. Single-family rentals are lingering vacant, and short-term investors are cutting rents just to slow their losses. For years, Atlanta was held up as the model for affordable, sustainable growth. Now it's becoming an example of imbalance, a city where construction never paused, even after demand began to fade. Atlanta's rental market didn't collapse all at once. It tightened gradually. Developers prioritized luxury over affordability. Landlords assumed tenants would always stretch further. When that belief finally cracked, momentum disappeared with it. In 2026, one of the Sunbelt's most trusted markets has been pulled into the same storm, and the road back may be far tougher than anyone expected. Number 7. Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas has always thrived on risk, where every boom creates both winners and losers. Right now, it's landlords who are feeling the downside of the gamble. For years, the city seemed unstoppable. Waves of newcomers arrived from California, drawn by lower living costs and the promise of opportunity. Investors rushed in, snapped up properties, and short-term rentals multiplied fast. The assumption was simple: the momentum would never slow. By 2026, that confidence has evaporated. Rents have dropped close to 10% compared to their peak in 2023, while vacancy rates have surged. Entire apartment communities in areas like Henderson and Summerlin are now only partially occupied. The Strip still shines, but underneath the neon glow, the numbers tell a very different story. Supply has completely outrun demand. Tourism, the engine that powers the local economy, has yet to return to full strength. Casinos are hiring less, conventions are smaller, and tip income has thinned out. At the same time, thousands of short-term rentals that once depended on weekend travelers are being pushed into the long-term market as owners scramble to cover their costs. Homes that once rented easily for $2,400 a month are now sitting at $1,900 with little interest. Landlords who bought near the top of the market are cutting prices just to keep cash coming in. Many investors who expected fast profits are quietly selling at a loss, choosing to exit before the damage deepens. What makes the situation worse is that construction hasn't slowed. Projects approved during the height of optimism are still being completed, adding even more high-end units to a market that's already saturated. In 2026, Las Vegas feels uncomfortably familiar, like a replay of 2008. Different circumstances, same mistake. Too much speculation, not enough stability. The lights are still bright, but behind the scenes, the city built on chance is learning what happens when the odds finally flip. Number 6. Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, once the scorching center of the sunbelt expansion, is losing steam far faster than anyone predicted. Just 2 years ago, it stood as the ultimate success story. A magnet for families relocating from California and the Midwest, drawn by space, sunshine, and opportunity. Rents soared, cranes filled the horizon, and builders raced to keep up. New neighborhoods in places like Chandler, Glendale, and Mesa seemed to appear overnight, all marketed as symbols of long-term stability and growth. By 2026, that optimism has faded into a clear case of oversupply. In just 1 year, more than 30,000 new rental units flooded the market, and tenant demand hasn't come close to matching it. Average rents have dropped around 12%, and landlords are pulling out every incentive imaginable to fill vacancies. Free rent periods, fully furnished units, even utilities covered up front. Complexes that once boasted long waitlists are now scrambling just to keep lights on. On the surface, the city still looks busy and modern. Financially, though, many properties are struggling. Insurance premiums and maintenance costs have surged, squeezing owners from both sides. Investors who bought upscale new builds at pandemic-era prices are now underwater, owing more than their properties could sell for today. The pressure isn't limited to housing. Phoenix's job market is tightening as well. Higher interest rates and slower migration have stalled corporate growth, leaving fewer workers to absorb the massive amount of new housing. From the urban core to the outer edges of the East Valley, landlords are coming face to face with an old lesson. Expansion without balance always comes at a cost. By 2026, Phoenix isn't just cooling off, it's undergoing a full correction. A city built to serve a future population far larger than today's is now adjusting to reality. The vision of non-stop growth has finally met its limits, and the consequences are only beginning to unfold. Number 5. Dallas, Texas. For a long time, Dallas seemed untouchable. Corporate headquarters kept relocating in, young professionals packed uptown, and suburban expansion felt endless. Developers and investors confidently labeled it the economic engine of Texas, convinced its momentum would never fade. But by 2026, that certainty has started to unravel. Rents in areas like Uptown, Plano, and Frisco are down roughly 10%, and vacancy rates in high-end Class A buildings have climbed to their highest levels in 10 years. The skyline still glitters, but behind the glass and steel, many landlords are growing uneasy. The explanation comes down to basic math. Construction raced far ahead of real demand. Between 2021 and 2024, tens of thousands of new apartments came online, just as renters began pulling back. Inflation has squeezed household budgets, interest rates remain elevated, and many would-be tenants are choosing to move back home or split rent with roommates. In response, landlords are reviving incentives that had disappeared during the boom: free utilities, covered parking, rent credits, anything to reduce vacancies. Investors who depended on steady cash flow are now watching rising insurance costs and property taxes eat through what little margin remains. The city that once embodied nonstop prosperity is now caught in a tricky imbalance. Too much luxury housing and not enough affordability. Even Dallas's strong corporate presence isn't providing the cushion it once did. Hiring slowdowns in tech and finance have reduced the steady stream of new renters, while longtime residents find themselves priced out of neighborhoods they helped shape. Dallas may still look impressive from a distance, its skyline glowing against the Texas night, but on the ground, the narrative is shifting. By 2026, the city that once symbolized unstoppable growth is learning a hard truth. No market, not even one this big, is immune to running out of momentum. Number 4. Boise, Idaho. Boise was the breakout star of the pandemic era. A modest mountain city suddenly hailed as America's housing miracle. While much of the country shut down, Boise stayed open. Remote workers streamed in from places like San Francisco, Seattle, and Portland, armed with cash offers, fueling bidding wars, and chasing the promise of a quieter, simpler lifestyle. Home prices skyrocketed, rents jumped, and developers rushed to build as if demand would never slow. By 2026, that illusion has cracked. Rents are down roughly 13% compared to last year, and vacancy rates are climbing faster here than anywhere else in the Mountain West. Downtown apartments that once filled up in a matter of days are now sitting vacant for months. Developers who added hundreds of polished high-end units during the boom are stuck with excess inventory, scrambling to attract renters who can realistically afford the prices. The problem runs deeper than timing. Boise's core renter population, teachers, nurses, hospitality workers, never earned Silicon Valley paychecks. They watched rents climb past $2,000 a month, then watched the wave of high-income transplants move on. As remote work loses momentum, Boise is left with housing costs built for a population that's no longer there. The slowdown has spread outward. Suburbs like Meridian, Nampa, and Eagle are feeling it too. Construction projects have been paused mid-build, materials sit unused, and investors who expected non-stop appreciation are selling at losses. Local cafes and restaurants that once benefited from steady newcomer traffic are cutting hours or closing their doors entirely. Landlords are responding by cutting prices aggressively. $300, $400, even $500 reductions, while offering free months and upgrades. Still, many units remain empty. The once active skyline now feels suspended, caught between boom and bust. Boise's story is both striking and sobering. A city that symbolized escape from big city chaos has become a lesson in what happens when the escape ends and economic reality settles back in. Number 3. Seattle, Washington. For the first time in more than 10 years, Seattle's skyline is sending a very different message, one of hesitation rather than confidence. After a long stretch of relentless growth, marked by soaring rents, non-stop construction, and tech money pushing housing ever higher, 2026 has become the moment of reckoning. Rents are down roughly 10%, and towers that once represented success are now defined by empty units. Layoffs at companies like Amazon and Microsoft, combined with a wave of startup failures, have hollowed out the city's high-income renter base. Downtown buildings that once had wait lists are now dangling cash incentives and free rent just to get people through the door. In neighborhoods such as Capitol Hill, South Lake Union, and Belltown, luxury apartments are advertising discounts that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. The slowdown isn't confined to the city core either. Suburban areas like Bellevue, Redmond, and Kirkland are seeing the same pattern: renewals dropping, tenants moving on, and vacancies piling up. Developers who assumed demand would last forever are now sitting on unsold inventory. Some projects have been paused or abandoned entirely, leaving half-finished structures scattered across the skyline as quiet reminders of overconfidence. But the shift goes beyond economics. It's psychological. The pandemic permanently altered how people think about work and lifestyle. Many who once chased Seattle's prestige are opting for smaller, more affordable cities where balance feels attainable. The outward migration isn't dramatic, but it's steady. Each household that leaves takes a bit of stability with it. For landlords, the leverage has flipped. Renters are negotiating again, pushing for flexible terms and lower prices. Seattle's glass towers still reflect the clouds and the mist, but now they also reflect uncertainty. In 2026, the city remains visually striking, yet beneath the glow lies fragility. Cracks formed not by earthquakes, but by an economy discovering that even tech-driven dreams have limits. Number 2. San Francisco, California. If there's one city that captures the meaning of a true collapse, it's San Francisco. Once celebrated as the epicenter of American innovation, its rental market has deteriorated into something barely recognizable. Rents have dropped about 15% compared to last year, and downtown vacancy rates have blown past every previous record. Luxury towers that once commanded $4,000 a month are now struggling to fill units at $3,000, even with heavy incentives attached. The tech worker exodus never bounced back. Remote work didn't fade. It became permanent. Downtown areas that once buzzed with startups, founders, and late-night energy now feel hollow, lined with quiet glass buildings and long stretches of for lease signs that no longer stand out because they're everywhere. Landlords who once bragged about effortless passive income are now scrambling for tenants. Rising property taxes, surging maintenance bills, and skyrocketing insurance costs have erased profits entirely. Investors who bought at peak prices are stuck. Refinancing often means locking in massive losses, and selling isn't much better. But the damage goes beyond spreadsheets. Perception, something no city can afford to lose, has shifted sharply. Ongoing concerns about crime, homelessness, and overall quality of life have pushed renters away in large numbers. Many are choosing places like Sacramento or Austin instead, cities that promise more space, greater safety, and a sense of normalcy. The ripple effects are everywhere. Restaurants, boutiques, and art spaces that once defined San Francisco's cultural identity are shutting down, leaving behind empty storefronts and a growing sense of absence. Even the city's legendary tech image is fading as companies relocate headquarters to more affordable regions. There's a bitter irony in it all. The city that once set the national benchmark for housing prices is now illustrating just how far a market can fall. San Francisco's downturn isn't a temporary slump. It's a fundamental shift. A cautionary tale etched in steel and glass, showing what happens when innovation races ahead and sustainability gets left behind. Number 1. New York City. At the top of the list sits the empire that once seemed unbreakable and is now beginning to fracture. For generations, New York City's rental market was considered invincible. Through recessions, crises, and shocks, demand always came roaring back. But by 2026, that long-held belief is wearing thin. Average rents in Manhattan have fallen about 12%, while Brooklyn and Queens are seeing drops closer to 15%. For the first time in decades, renters hold the advantage, and landlords are scrambling to adjust. Incentives that vanished during the boom have returned in force. Free months of rent, waived security deposits, even luxury upgrades designed to entice hesitant tenants. Between 2021 and 2023, developers built aggressively, betting that limitless wealth would keep new towers full. Instead, many of those gleaming high-rises now overlook streets that feel noticeably quieter. Layoffs across finance, media, and tech have weakened the renter base that once made New York so resilient. International buyers, long the hidden engine behind Manhattan's real estate machine, have stepped back amid global uncertainty and rising taxes. Even the ultra-wealthy are pulling in their spending. Luxury units along Billionaires Row are being repriced hundreds of thousands of dollars lower, while owners of mid-market buildings are facing punishing refinancing rates that are crushing cash flow. For smaller landlords, talk of foreclosure is no longer unthinkable. At the same time, younger professionals who once accepted any price for a Manhattan studio are leaving for cities like Charlotte, Nashville, and Philadelphia, places that offer opportunity without the same financial strain. The culture, the pace, the chaos, they're all still part of New York's identity. But fewer people can afford the entry fee. New York's shift isn't sudden or explosive. It's gradual and deliberate, a slow tightening as the city confronts its own limits. In 2026, even longtime New Yorkers are acknowledging what once felt impossible. The empire of rent has reached its ceiling. The skyline still sparkles, but beneath it lies a new reality. One where ambition finally runs into exhaustion, and the city that never sleeps pauses, just briefly, to catch its breath. Across the United States, a quieter transformation is taking place. For the first time in more than a decade, tenants are regaining control. The era of bidding wars, blind applications, and relentless rent hikes is giving way to vacant units, falling prices, and anxious landlords. This isn't merely a pricing adjustment, it's a cultural shift. Millions of Americans are reevaluating whether renting or even owning still makes sense. In an economy where expenses rise faster than wages, developers built luxury. Renters needed livability. Investors chased returns. Families sought stability. Now, the reckoning has arrived. Some cities will rebound, others will contract. But everywhere, the lesson is the same. Housing markets don't escape gravity forever. You've been watching Discover the Cities, your destination for cinematic deep dives into America's most important transformations. If this breakdown opened your eyes, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video, because what's unfolding in the rental market today is only the beginning. And as always, the numbers tell the story.